In today's video, we'll learn how to apply VLOOKUP when there's multiple criteria. So in our demonstration, let's say we have a table with multiple conditions and we want to extract a value from it based on these multiple conditions. In the table, we have lower risk of misstatement, higher risk of misstatement. Under each of the headings, we have not higher and higher risk of control. And then in our y-axis, we have yearly, quarterly, and monthly. So in results, let's say we apply the first condition, lower risk of misstatement, and then for risk with control we'll apply not higher, and then for frequency we'll apply, let's say, quarterly. So this pulls up in the last column, sample size here, you can see that it pulled up number 3. If we go back to the table and we look at those multiple conditions again, low risk of misstatement, not higher risk of control, and then we pick quarterly, you can see that the value is also 3 from the table. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how we extracted 3 from the table using VLOOKUP. So what you're going to do, the first step is you're going to convert the multiple conditions or the table into single line syntaxes. So all the possible outcomes and then applying the values to each of those single lines. So here, starting with risk of misstatement, we know there's 2 possible outcomes, lower and higher. So let's go ahead and fill that in. And then for control risk, we know it's between not higher and higher. And in each of these, there's 3 possible outcomes, yearly, quarterly, and monthly. So not higher. We'll do 3 of these. And then for each of them, it'll be yearly, quarterly, monthly. And then for higher, it'll be also 3, yearly, quarterly, and monthly. So we'll just copy and paste. And then the next step is just to combine each of these multiple criteria into one single column or one single cell. So we'll use the concatenate function. So we'll click misstatement risk, comma, we'll split it with a hyphen, quotation, hyphen, quotation, and then comma, and then we'll click on our control risk, comma, quotation, hyphen, quotation, comma, and then we'll click frequency, and then we'll close our function, click and drag. We're just going to copy this column and then paste as values only onto the next column. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to apply the values from the table based on each of these single line conditions. So we started with lower risk of misstatement, not higher risk of control. So we're just going to fill in these values over here, 5, 3, 1, and then the next one is lower risk of misstatement but with higher risk of control. So we'll apply these numbers in. And then the next one is higher risk of misstatement, not higher risk of control. So we'll apply these numbers in. And then our last set, which is high risk of misstatement with high risk of control, we'll apply these ones in. So now we have finished converting our table into single line syntaxes. So what you can do next is you can apply data validation to create our condition drop-down list. So we're going to go to data validation. We're going to click on list, our source. Well, you'll type out the possible outcomes for each of the categories. So I already did that up here. So it will be lower or higher. Click OK. As you can see, the drop-down list, it says lower or higher. And then we'll move on to our next category, which is control risk. Go to do the same thing, data validation. Go to list, source, highlight the cells that you've put in your data in, press OK. And then frequency, same thing, data validation, go to list, and then your source, the cells that you inputted your data in. Press OK. And then depending on how many controls or how many VLOOKUPs you want to do, you're just going to click and drag. We only have 2 controls here, so I'm just going to click and drag down so that my drop-down list also applies to the rows below it. And then we're just going to apply concatenate function over here. So this is our third step. We're going to create a concatenate function so that we can apply our VLOOKUP against our reference compared to the reference we created above. So concatenate. So we're going to click this empty cell at the moment, which has our drop-down function, comma, and then quotation mark hyphen, and then click our control risk. And then comma, quotation, hyphen, quotation, and then comma, and then click frequency. So the concatenate function that we create down here should follow the same format that we created in our rules syntax table above. Over here, our last step is applying the Vlookup function. So Vlookup, and then we're going to click on Vlookup. So the first one is lookup value. We're going to click here, the concatenate function that we just created, and then comma. Our table array is that rule table that we created earlier that has all the possible rules for each condition, and then comma. So our column index number would be basically the numbers, the ones we're looking for. So we'll put in 2, comma, and then we want exact match, so we'll type in false, and then close the function. So then we're just going to click and drag this one down as well. At the moment, it says n-a because we haven't applied our conditions yet. So we have 2 controls. We've clicked and dragged down the drop-down list. We've clicked and dragged down the concatenate function, and we've clicked and dragged down our sample size function. Also in the Vlookup function, remember to F4 the table arrays. So let's apply in our conditions. Lower, not higher, yearly. As you can see, it pulled up number 5. Over here, lower risk, not higher, yearly, also 5. And then let's try another one. Let's do higher, higher, and let's try monthly. As you can see, it pulled up 7. We'll go look at the table, higher, control risk, higher, and then frequency monthly is, so then it also has 7. So yeah, there you go. That's how you VLOOKUP with mutable conditions.